Hello and welcome to the Ham Radio Guy podcast. I'm Marvin, and my call sign is W0MET. Whether you're an experienced ham or just getting started, this podcast is for you, and we're bringing you the latest of topics, news, and information, and all things amateur radio, each episode right here to this show. This is episode number 24. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Well, we'll be talking about in this episode, we'll be discussing our second episode on emergency communications. This is just a two-part, or the second part of a three-part series that we'll be talking about. So I'll get into that a little bit later in the show. One of the things I wanted to highlight first was kind of projects and things that's been going on. But one of the things I was able to tweet out earlier this week was an item that I realized was kind of very common in a lot of my stuff, and that is the Fisher Space Pen. I'll provide a link for that here in the show notes, and that you can find as well on buymeacoffee.com or my website, thehamradioguide.com. Now, no matter what the environment was for your outdoor setting, their pens have always wrote for me with no problem. These are the perfect all-weather pens that write in the cold, rain, snow, mud, sleet, and heat. I carry one in my backpack for work, carry one in my truck, carry one in my ham radio gear, and I use this pen almost daily. So check out the link to get one of these for yourself. And, again, that link is in the show notes. And it might be great for any field day event or a POTA outing as well, if you especially do your logs, paper logs. And write in the rain notebook is always great, too, to go with that. So I apologize if it sounds a little droggy today. A little bit of a late summer cold going on here and whatnot. But, we'll push through here and get this episode completed. Well, one of the things I've been talking about is trailer items and getting my emergency communication trailer set up and working. So I did receive the trailer now, and we've got all the parts. Haven't had time to really sit down and necessarily get those things installed. But now it's really coming up. Now I've got some wall space and measurements, trying to figure out where everything's going to go, how it's going to be mounted on the wall, what's the most efficient use of that. And then if I want to put like a cabinet in there, I want to hide it behind the cabinet or on a shelf somehow. So I'm trying to figure some of that out still and what that may look like. But that is, definitely coming along, and we'll talk more about that. It'll probably be a couple episodes now because it's actually in Missouri temporarily, and I won't see that thing till mid-October again. But we will get maybe a couple photos out on that as well along the way, showing some of our action, get those tweeted out on our social media page. One of the things I want to talk about also was a vendor highlight. I've done this in several episodes, and one of the things that I was able to come across at the Huntsville Ham Fest. This is called American Filament. They manufacture high-quality 3D printing filament using materials sourced from within the USA and provide top-notch 3D design and printing services using a combined 25-plus years of design, prototyping, and printing experience. So we will have the owner on a very near episode, so stay tuned for that episode. We'll be talking about printers. I know a lot of people on ham radio use 3D printers, and so we're excited to get them on here and talk about this a little bit more and learn about 3D printing and filaments and why theirs is good and or maybe in their case is great. So we'll definitely talk about that and go from there. My sponsor for the show again today, Club Gear Online. Carries all your favorite swag, ham radio gear for your loved one to birthday or other holidays like Father's Day or Christmas. Check out Club Gear Online. Recent items released, the desktop mats, POTA keychains, metal band plans. Club Gear Online has what you need, and he can customize coins or poker chips, QSL cards, and other great gear just for you. Email him direct from the website, clubgearonline.com, and you can find him now on Etsy. He's released a store on there, so he has some items on there you can find as well. And reach out to him for all your ham radio gear or gifts you would like to find. If you'd like to help support the channel and become a patron, look for me on buymeacoffee.com/the Ham Radio Guy. There's 3 levels you can support me at: a technician, general, or extra. And you can simply support the channel at just $1 a month or get the extra class membership with more benefits. So I appreciate that, and thank you guys for being part of the channel and subscribing and liking the podcast as well. Again, hanging with me in there through this week, a little bit with a little stuffiness going on. But let's move into a little bit of news here, and we'll see what's going on. Get into our topic for the week. Well, the amateur radio news with a release date of September 15th here, Hurricane Lee is expected to affect parts of the New England in the U.S. and Nova Scotia and New Brunswick in Canada. Amateur Radio Emergency Service ARRL groups are on high alert and ready to respond. The ARRL section in the impacted areas are preparing for activation with concerns about power outages due to potential tree falls and heavy rain. Eastern Massachusetts and Rhode Island have already experienced flooding and tornadoes. The Hurricane Watch Net is in alert level 2, closely monitoring the storm's progress. The hurricane voiced over IP net plans to activate and collect reports. Both groups send to the WX4NHC amateur radio station at the National Hurricane Center. Amateur radio operators are advised to prepare their stations using ARRL's Go Kit checklist. And I will provide a link to that also in the show notes. So you'll find a copy of that, or you can get a copy of that ARRL's checklist as well there. Well, one other article I found this week is pretty interesting for those that may or may not know that there is a program out there, an app on the iPhone called Radio Mail. And in this news segment here, it's great for sending WinLink over your iPhone using like a MobiLink or something like that. The article reports that the latest iOS 17, the release candidate version, identified as 21A329, is causing Radio Mail app to crash when it's launched. The problem is consistently reproducible, but a solution has not been identified yet. The issue is not present in the early beta versions of iOS 17, and the recommendation is to hold off on upgrading to iOS 17 until the problem is resolved, in the hope that as Apple will address the issue soon. Users are experiencing this crash are encouraged to submit a report to Apple through the Feedback app. So if you're using WinLink Mail app on your iPhone, just realize that upgrading to iOS 17 may cause some issues, but it's being worked on and they're well aware of it. One other final article I found for this week, again, I try and do about 3 articles a week, is the once ubiquitous presence of the electronics retail landscape, Radio Shack, now selling amateur radio, known for selling amateur radio gear, faded into obscurity in the United States after filing for Chapter 11 about 2015. And however, the brand may be poised for a comeback thanks to an unexpected twist. Unicommer recently extended its Radio Shack ownership to about 70 additional countries, including the U.S., Canada, Europe, and China. With a proven track record in retail management, there's speculation that Unicommer might attempt to revive Radio Shack's brick-and-mortar presence worldwide. So the corporate website hints that it plans to develop a business and reach customers with a broad product portfolio, but provides no specific details. So tell us what you think about the stories and what is your experience with Radio Shack out there. Will it make a comeback? Can it have the nostalgia it once had and be available for us again in a brick and mortar format? So looking forward to that, and we'll see where if that comes back and makes a difference. That would be cool to have Radio Shack back around. I did enjoy the store. It was always great. All right. Well, welcome back to the show here. We are heading into part 2 of the 3-part series on emergency communications. This month of September, it is National Preparedness Month. in observance of each September to raise awareness about the importance of preparing for disasters and emergencies that could happen at any time. And, each episode we're discussing the critical amateur radio plays in emergency communications. So let's get into this a little bit more and dive into this and see what this looks like for this week. One of the fundamental aspects, I list this out kind of as bullet points usually, but one of the fundamental aspects of amateur radio, I found it was in part 97, 97.1 of the rules and regulations governing the hobby of amateur radio. Its commitment is to provide emergency communications. And this commitment reflects the amateur radio's community recognition and dedication to enhancing the part of our service to the public in times of need. And that's what a lot of us got into ham radio for, is to be able to have that community service and provide a service back to the community. And so, that comes right out of our rules and regulations. A lot of amateur radios take this very seriously. I mean, it is a big responsibility to have out there. They volunteer their time and hours and expertise to assist with various served agencies. Maybe it may be something like the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency or a state agency of some sort, or it may be a local emergency management office. It may be something like a CERT team, could be a Red Cross. So a lot of different agencies out there that they will, have access to. And these efforts will span, from local events, maybe sometimes like a search and rescue for a missing person, or again, helping with a town's CERT team to some type of statewide involvement, for wildfires and flooding, international disaster relief with tsunamis, or hurricanes. We help out with, major countries like Haiti or Puerto Rico when they've had major disasters down there. So what does it really take to get involved in public service and emergency communication through amateur radio? If you're new to this, you may not know, and you may have that question. Well, really, it's two things I could think of that I came across, and that's a technician class license for amateur radio and a willingness to serve. And I guess a need to feel like you want to, give something back. Once you obtain your amateur radio license, the next step is to maybe join like a CERT team or an amateur radio emergency communication organization, a local club of some sort. It could be ARRLs, it could be RACES. And, these groups are usually associated with amateur radio clubs in your area, and you could find them. You can go to ARRL and search for them. You might be able to just do a Facebook or a Google search and find some of these organizations that are more local to your area. And they can help guide you on the equipment you need and the training required to become an effective emergency communicator. So they can, tell you what type of equipment they need to use, and you can certainly go back to the ARRL checklist as well. But you go, well, I got a cell phone. What? I don't need a radio. Why is that important? Well, in emergency, cell phones were going to go down. That's a lot of people don't necessarily think that's a, it's a permanent communication solution. But if power goes out, that doesn't happen. So one of the first things to remember is that cell phone towers can go down in emergency, leaving large areas without communication. Moreover, some rural areas may even lack cell phone coverage. And I know I've mentioned that in previous episode as well about talking about this a little bit, but think about it from this perspective. Just think about going out to a large event like a sports stadium, a city holiday celebration of some sort, like a 4th of July or Christmas parade, and your cell phone use during that time is high in that immediate area, right? And because of all the coverage it's providing to those cell phones for the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people in that area during the time, I'm sure you've seen a diminished use of the cell phone where you can't call out very well, or you're slow sending a text out. And so now imagine a cell phone tower without power, and you still got, lots of people in the area that one cell tower is trying to provide service for. So, that's why cell phones are not a viable source of communication during an emergency. Now, many states have invested in 800 megahertz trunking systems to support emergency responders. And, these systems aren't without limitations either. In some of these situations, trucking systems can become overloaded, also making it challenging for responders to communicate effectively. And a lot of first responders work off of cell towers. They are using LTE equipment, Verizon and AT&T, like FirstNet, to rely on some of that for some of their communication. And if that goes down, that makes a problem for them as well. And in a trunking system, again, there's a limited number of channels available on the trunk system tower that agencies and groups can get on and communicate together. And so this is really where amateur radio shines and comes through. Amateur radio operators have equipment and expertise to create ad hoc networks, and we can fill in the gaps where communication is needed. We can set up stations literally on a back of a truck or in a trailer or, on a fold-out table. And, we can provide, voice communications, even without, having a repeater or power there. And because on a major storm, you may lose those items as well. But we can set up, pretty much anywhere, anytime. And we can use digital communication. We can use WinLink to send emails and computer files or images over radio links. And, we can send emails with attachments like through WinLink. So, WinLink's also used by government and non-government public service organizations, medical, humanitarian, nonprofits, again, like Red Cross, emergency communication organizations. This actually sounds like it could be another podcast by itself, talking about WinLink and everything it can do, its features, its capabilities. And it's one of those things that I'm still trying to learn and go through a lot. And I've got it figured out now using a Linux setup, which is great. But we'll move on at this point to talk about WinLink, but definitely maybe move back into that in another time, because it could be certainly a good part of emergency communications, that it's good for you to have that at your tool belt, have it on your side if you need it. So you've got your radio, you've got your equipment. And now you kind of want to know what radio frequencies are used in emergencies. Well, I'd like to say everything is. It's all available within your license capability, right? So, any and all frequencies are available. So, for instance, in Puerto Rico, amateur radio operators used HF frequencies to send and receive voice and digital messages due to the vast distances involved coming, across from Puerto Rico to the U.S. And often, not possible on other amateur radio frequencies, like a VHF or UHF. And so they're more commonly used for, we refer to that as 2 meters and 440, but they're used for, emergency or public service communication over a smaller area, more of a local area. Skywarn nets will use that typically, providing crucial weather information to local emergency managers and weather agencies like the National Weather Service. And, they operate on countywide VHF or UHF repeaters, relaying the information back to the National Weather Service. Now, here in Tennessee, we have a system called M-Tiers, and it really goes across the state from one side to the other practically, covering a good portion of the state. And we can relay all that information right back to a National Weather Service station locally. And so, talking about the National Weather Service, they're using Slack now for its National Weather Service chat rooms and weather information. And it appears to be more stable than the old Northwest or NWS chat, and a lot of people might refer to it as, that they had. And so it's a much more stable platform, and it's much easier to get into and keep up with as well. So, again, using those VHF and UHF frequencies for local stuff. But besides that, we have other things in our tool belt for amateur radio using like the 2.4 or 5 gigahertz bands for amateur radio, sending information over those frequencies, the higher bandwidth, making data communications faster, which can be vital for certain emergency situations. And we'll use this, or typically refer to this as like ARRL, Amateur Radio Emergency Data Network, setting up, a mesh network of some sort, sending RF data over the bands to communicate with things like you can do voice over IP, we can make phone calls, We can provide internet to other areas using Eridan, just using the 2.4 or 5 gigahertz band and whatnot. And that's a great little system that you can tie into and network from other locations that may have better service. So it's kind of like a mesh networking that involves several access points and combining them together. And that's what we can do in that local area if emergency was to come up. Now, I did say earlier that a technician class license was sufficient because most of the activities do occur on VHF and UHF on a local level. But, as you gain experience, I would highly recommend that you upgrade to a general class license. Now, this is because, as I mentioned earlier, some emergency situations may require HF communications. Again, if you're trying to relay a message from Puerto Rico or Haiti or something, technicians don't have that necessarily privilege to be able to do that. Now, before I went on the air here today, I was listening to HF on 20 meters, and it sounds like the Route 66 is going on this weekend. The New Jersey QSO party, the Texas QSO party, all on HF, and that's it's just a ton of fun to get on HF and operate and listen to those stations and communicate with them. So, while it's great for emergency communications, it's also great to be able to have the ability to talk further out when you want to. So, you always want to aim for the highest level of proficiency, considering an amateur radio extra license, which is what I have. And again, talk about those added frequency privileges. The advanced license provides you with an in-depth knowledge of electronics. You gain more information, understanding of antennas and radio wave characteristics, making you a better communicator, understanding why you have noise levels or why you have antenna issues and SWRs and issues and things like that. And so, what is, decibels and things like that. So you understand what, you lose, I'm drawing a blank on what I wanted to go to on this, but anyway, you do get more knowledge becoming a extra class license, and it does help you out a lot. Now, it's essential to note that in obtaining your amateur license, emergency communication groups like ARRLs or RACES require specific training, and they may want you to become an extra or general class licensed operator to be able to do more. But having extra training never hurts anyone. It's always good to have more education and have some basic courses that are readily accessible with online typically. And we're going to talk about them in just a second here. And this is the other part of emergency communications and gaining a better understanding of, now you've had an emergency, you've got your radio, you've got your equipment, you know what frequencies you're going to be on, but can you just go show up at an event? Can you show up somewhere in a disaster, say, hey, I'm here to help? And so really want to help you understand incident command system. Now, being in prior law enforcement, I understand this, and I've gone through a lot of these courses, and I've taken them several times over as they go from version A to version B, version C, etc. And I will describe some of these courses in basic in just a second here, but these are typically mandated by organizations like Team Rubicon or Red Cross or the ITDRC, and probably even your local ARRLs or RACES group will require that you have these basic courses. It lets them know you understand the basics of an emergency and what it consists of. So the Federal Emergency Management Agency has offered a range of emergency preparedness courses through its website, and I've provided a link to that, training.fema.gov/is, and that is, I'll put that in the show notes. But of course, these are designed to provide individuals with essential knowledge and skills for responding to emergencies and disasters effectively. Now, some of the key courses that I would highly recommend that you go get to have a basic understanding and concept of the incident command system and how emergencies work is ICS 100. Now, this is an introduction to the incident command system. And of course, this introduces participants to the incident command system, which is a standardized approach by emergency responders to manage incidents effectively. It covers the basic principles and organizational structures of ICS. ICS 200 builds on the knowledge from ICS 100, and this course develops deeper into the ICS structure, including how to manage incidents involving multiple agencies and resources. And then you've got Introduction to the National Incident Management System, NIMS, It's a comprehensive framework for managing emergencies in the United States, and it again gives you the principles and how to apply those to incident management. And finally, ICS 800. It's a national response framework, outlines the nation's response to all types of disasters and emergencies, and they are covered the key components and how to guide response efforts. So pretty simple courses, probably take an hour or two each. But if you ever want to do like an Oxcom course, anything like that, it will also require you to have those courses, and it's good to have them under your belt. Well, courses are valuable for obviously emergency responders, government officials, anyone interested in understanding how an emergency manager operates in the United States. And completing these courses helps contribute to your community service, your amateur radio club, and gives you a better understanding of preparedness and more effectively how to respond to that emergency and disaster. Some people just panic and have no idea what to do and how they can do that. So accessing these courses and more on that FEMA website, I'll again provide a link to that in the show notes, and I think that will help you a lot. If you haven't got those courses or you need to maybe do an update from version B to version C, go out and do that as well. So there's a lot you have there, a lot of information I've given you, but I really do believe that it's critical. An amateur radio operator does have a critical role to play in emergency communications, and it's a hobby that transforms into a lifeline when disaster strikes. A lot of people rely on amateur radio operators, and connecting people and providing vital information when other systems have simply just. So if you're interested in getting involved, there are numerous amateur radio organizations focused on this type of public service and this emergency communications. Get ARRLs, RACES. You can do Team Rubicon, ITDRC. They all kind of use amateur radios as well in some form of communication. I mean, even just going out and getting a GMRS license may be helpful for you to be able to have some communication when a disaster strikes. So, join one of those teams, receive the training, and just be ready to lend your skills whenever the community needs them the most. This is, again, National Preparedness Month, and just I figured it was a great time to be able to talk about this. And if you need more information, go out to ready.gov. FEMA and the federal government puts out some information in there. So there's all kinds of stuff out there. If you type in go bag checklist or emergency checklist, there's all kinds of stuff you can find online talking about that a little bit more, and developing your own list and your checklist and having a copy of that of what you want. Well, if you have any questions or need more information on this, please feel free to reach out to me. I've got a brand new email address now, W0MET, my call sign, at thehamradioguide.com. Again, W0MET at thehamradioguide.com, and you can find that on the webpage as well. So I hope that if you have any questions or comments on this, talking about emergency communications, part 2 in this segment this week, that you'll definitely look at reaching out to me and providing any comment you might have on some of this, and I'll go from there. And look forward to hearing from you. Well, looking for all things ham radio related, visit the Ham Radio Guy website at thehamradioguide.com for informative content, product reviews, and exciting blog posts. Join the conversation on your favorite podcast platform and stay up to date with the latest trends and news in ham radio world. Connect with us. I can't say today. I tell you, I'm a little stuffed up again. Connect with us on Twitter at the Ham Radio Guy. For even more updates and engaging interactions, and don't miss out on the fun and knowledge sharing. Subscribe to the Ham Radio Guy podcast today and keep up to date with everything we're doing on this channel. So let's get into a few Hamfest. Talk about some of those upcoming. Just a week out from here, September 22nd and 23rd, the HRO Superfest, hosting the ARRL Wisconsin State Convention, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. If you're in that neck of the woods. The Red River Radio Amateur 2023 Hamfest will be in West Fargo, North Dakota, and sponsoring the ARRL Dakota Division Convention. The September 23rd Spokane Hamfest looks like it's been canceled. But October 6th and 7th, the Slidell EOC Hamfest, sponsoring the ARRL Louisiana State Convention. That'll be held in Slidell, Louisiana. And then Wichita Area Kansas State Hamfest, sponsoring the ARRL Kansas Convention, will be held in Wichita, Kansas on October 7th. So there you go. There's some future Hamfests coming up. If you're in one of those areas, feel free to slide on over to that. And, catch another Hamfest there before end of the year here as we go. Well, Bob brings this show to an end here. If you enjoy the podcast, we'd appreciate it if you become a subscriber wherever you get your podcast. If you can rate and review the show, go out to Spotify or Apple Podcast, or you can just go old school and tell your friends or family, neighbors, hell, anybody you want might hear something they like. They can join in and listen to this podcast. If you're on social media, be sure to, again, follow us on Twitter at buymeacoffee.com/The Ham Radio Guy. You can listen to us on YouTube version on the W0MET channel. So I hope that you learned something as well this week, and that this will help you in your ham radio operations. If you have questions or comments, please leave them on Twitter, podcast platform, or email me. Again, W0MET@thehamradioguy.com. As always, this is your ham radio guy in the chair and on the air. I say 73, W0MET.